Hello, and welcome to The Brief Insight, your go to podcast for breaking down the latest trends, research, and policies shaping our world. Whether you're passionate about sustainability, global economics, or emerging innovations, this is where we simplify complex ideas to keep you informed and inspired. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and share it with anyone looking for insights that matter. We're here every Monday and Friday, so hit that notification bell to stay updated. Your support helps us grow and continue bringing you sharp, relevant content that sparks conversation. Thank you for tuning into The Brief Insight. Now let's dive into today's topic.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time all about the sharing economy and how we're accessing and using resources these days.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot topic right now.
It really is. We've got a ton of great sources for this one too, from, all over the place.
We've been looking at academic reports, articles, even a company white paper,
It's a whole shebang.
all about the sharing economy.
Now, I know you've all heard of Uber and Airbnb. Those are kind of the big names everyone thinks of, right?
For sure, they're like the poster children for this whole sharing thing. But this
Okay.
deep dive, we're going way beyond that.
Absolutely. And to kick things off, I found this crazy stat.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 2017, researchers found that privately owned cars were only being used for like 5% of their lifespan.
95% of the time, they're just sitting there.
That's a lot of untapped potential, right?
Huge. And that's where the sharing economy comes in.
Okay, so let's back up for a sec. What exactly do we mean when we say sharing economy?
So at its core, it's all about connecting people who have something to share with people who need it. Right? It makes sense.
It's this peer-to-peer economic model, and it makes it easier for people to access goods and services without actually owning them.
So rather than everyone buying their own lawnmower, you can just borrow one from your neighbor when you need it.
Exactly. Or, run a car for a few hours instead of owning one.
And a lot of this is happening online, right?
Yeah. These days, it's mostly through these online platforms. Think of them like digital marketplaces where people can connect directly.
So like Zipcar, where you can rent a car for a few hours.
Yeah. Or Airbnb, where you can find a place to stay, for a weekend getaway or something.
So basically, it's all about using what's already out there more efficiently.
Exactly. And it lets people turn those underused assets into opportunities.
Like someone with an extra bedroom can rent it out and
Right.
earn some extra cash.
And someone who just needs a car for a couple hours doesn't have to buy a whole car.
It's win-win.
Totally.
Now, this idea of sharing isn't new, is it?
Not at all. People have been sharing and exchanging things for centuries.
Look, trade
Yeah. Or, community lending libraries where people share books.
or neighbors helping each other out with childcare.
Exactly. That kind of thing has always been around.
So what's changed? Why is everyone talking about the sharing economy now?
The internet, that's the big thing.
The internet makes everything different.
Seriously, without the internet, a platform like Airbnb wouldn't be possible.
They couldn't connect travelers or hosts all over the world.
Nope. And it's not just Airbnb. The internet and all the data it generates have completely changed how we connect with each other.
And it's allowed this whole sharing economy model to just explode.
Seriously, we've seen the market value of this thing skyrocket from like $14 billion back in 2014.
To a projected $827.1 billion by 2032.
Billion with a B. That's insane.
That's wild. It's a sign that this is becoming a major force in our world.
Absolutely.
And it's not just limited to like ride sharing and home sharing either.
Right. We're seeing this model pop up in all sorts of interesting places.
Like co-working spaces.
Yeah, where people are ditching those traditional offices and sharing workspaces.
Right. Collaboration, more flexibility.
Right. And then you have these peer-to-peer lending platforms that are shaking up the financial industry.
Cutting out the middleman.
Exactly. Individuals are lending money to each other, getting better rates.
And I know you're big into fashion. What's happening in that world?
Oh, it's so cool. There are platforms like Threadflip and Rent the Runway where you can buy and sell or rent clothes.
More sustainable.
Totally reduces waste. Gives those amazing outfits a second life.
And let's not forget about all the freelance platforms out there connecting skilled workers with people who need their services.
Writers, designers, programmers, virtual assistants, you name it.
The gig economy is booming.
And it's all thanks to these platforms. It seems like every day there's a new one popping up, finding a new way to connect people and disrupt those traditional industries.
So the sharing economy is constantly evolving.
Absolutely.
But let's be real, it's not all perfect, right?
Definitely not. Like
Yeah.
any disruptive force, there are going to be some growing pains.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is figuring out how to regulate these new platforms.
That makes sense. They're often operating these gray areas, disrupting industries that have been heavily regulated for years.
Like taxis and hotels. Think about it.
So the question is, should these sharing platforms be subject to the same rules as traditional businesses?
It's a tough one because you want to encourage innovation, but you also have to protect consumers and make sure there's fair competition.
It's a tough balance.
It really is. Take Airbnb, for example.
Yeah, they've faced a lot of scrutiny over the years.
Concerns about tax avoidance, illegal rental units popping up.
So it's a balancing act trying to find that sweet spot between encouraging innovation and protecting people.
Exactly.
Another thing that worries me is the potential for bias within these platforms.
So yeah, it's a big one.
Are people being unfairly excluded or treated differently based on their race or gender?
That's the question. And it's something that these platforms need to be actively addressing. Airbnb, to their credit, they've taken some steps to combat discrimination and promote inclusivity. But it's an ongoing challenge for sure.
And another thing that makes me wonder is whether some of these services are moving away from the original spirit of sharing.
How so?
Well, it seems like we're seeing more full-time businesses operating on these platforms, not just individuals sharing their underused resources.
That raises a really interesting question. Is this still truly a sharing economy?
Like with Airbnb, some people argue that it's contributing to rising housing costs in some cities.
Right. If people are buying up properties just to rent them out full-time on Airbnb, it reduces the amount of affordable housing for locals.
So are these platforms really disrupting the status quo, or are they just becoming the new establishment?
Are they mirroring the very industries they were supposed to shake up?
It's complex, and it makes you wonder if there are alternative models out there that might address some of these concerns.
Well, there are. And one that's gaining some traction is the gift economy.
The gift economy.
Yeah, it shifts the focus away from transactions and towards community support and sustainability.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this gift economy. What does it look like in action?
Well, think about initiatives like the Buy Nothing Project, where people create these hyperlocal networks to give away and receive goods and services for free.
So it's like neighbors helping neighbors.
Exactly, strengthening communities, keeping perfectly good stuff out of landfills.
That's such a cool idea. What are some other examples?
Well, there are repair cafes popping up all over.
Repair cafes.
Yeah, there are community spaces where people can bring broken items and learn how to fix them instead of just throwing them away.
Oh, I love that it's so practical.
Right. Promotes a culture of repair and reuse.
And then there are tool libraries.
Yes. Instead of everyone buying their own lawnmower or power drill, they can just borrow one from a shared community space.
Like a library, but for tools.
Exactly. Saves money and resources.
And we can't forget about those little free libraries that are popping up everywhere.
So cute.
Take a book, leave a book, fostering a love of reading, strengthening those community connections.
That's awesome.
It's amazing how the gift economy really taps into that human desire to connect, share, and support each other.
It reminds us that economics doesn't always have to be about profit and individual gain.
It's a refreshing contrast to the often transactional nature of the sharing economy.
Building relationships, fostering generosity, contributing to the well-being of our communities.
Now, one of the big arguments in favor of the sharing economy is that it's good for the environment.
Right.
But is it really as eco-friendly as it's often made out to be?
That's a great question, and it's not a simple yes or no answer.
There are definitely some potential benefits, but it's important to look at the whole picture.
For sure.
On the one hand, it seems like the sharing economy could lead to a more efficient use of resources.
Like if more people are using ride-sharing services, maybe fewer people need to own cars.
Fewer cars on the road, less traffic congestion, potentially even lower emissions.
Right, but then there's also this thing called the rebound effect to
Oh.
consider.
Rebound effect.
Yeah, the idea is that if something becomes more accessible and affordable, people might actually end up using it more.
So does ride sharing really reduce car usage overall?
Or does it just make transportation so cheap and convenient that people end up taking more trips?
That's a good point.
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
We need more data and research to really understand the environmental impact of these services.
And let's not forget about the impact of the sharing economy on workers and jobs.
Oh, yeah. The rise of the gig economy has been both praised and criticized.
For some people, the flexibility of gig work is amazing.
Set your own hours, work from anywhere. Be your own boss.
But it often lacks the stability and benefits of traditional employment.
No paid time off, no health insurance.
Think about Uber drivers, for example.
They're classified as independent contractors.
Which means they don't get those benefits.
There's a lot of debate about whether gig workers should have the same rights and protections as traditional employees. Things like minimum wage guarantees, paid time off health insurance.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Definitely.
It seems like the sharing economy is full of these trade-offs.
Yeah.
It's exciting and innovative, but it also raises a lot of important questions about fairness, sustainability, and the future of work.
For sure, it's a dynamic, constantly evolving landscape, and we've only just scratched the surface.
But now it's time to shift gears a bit and zoom in on how the sharing economy is actually reshaping specific industries. Buckle up, because we're about to take a whirlwind tour.
We're going to see how this model is shaking things up across the board, from the way we get around.
To how we find places to stay, how we manage our finances, even access healthcare.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how wide-reaching the impact is.
Let's start with an industry that's been completely transformed by the sharing economy, transportation.
Transportation.
Companies like Uber and Lyft, they've become household names,
They're everywhere.
offering on-demand rides at the tap of a screen.
Yeah, they've revolutionized ride-hailing,
Yeah.
offering convenience and competitive prices, but their impact goes way beyond just providing rides.
Yeah, they've disrupted the traditional taxi industry, which has led to, some pretty heated debates about regulations and fair competition.
A classic case of new technology challenging the old guard.
Some people argue that these ride-hailing platforms should play by the same rules as taxis, facing the same regulations and licensing requirements.
Right. But then others say overregulation could stifle innovation and limit consumer choice.
It's tricky.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
For sure, there are valid arguments on both sides.
You want to ensure a level playing field and protect consumers.
Right.
But you don't want to stifle the dynamism that these new platforms bring to the market.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about ride-hailing either. The sharing economy is also changing how we think about car ownership altogether.
With services like Zipcar and all those car-sharing platforms popping up,
People have more options for accessing vehicles without the burden and expense of ownership.
it's a shift from owning to accessing.
Need a car for a few hours or a weekend trip? No problem. Just book one on a sharing platform.
Could lead to fewer cars on the road,
Less congestion?
potentially even a reduction in emissions.
That all sounds great in theory, but remember the rebound effect we talked about earlier?
Oh yeah, what if the convenience and affordability of these services actually lead to more driving?
More driving.
It's a question researchers are trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's not always a straightforward equation.
Yep.
The environmental impact of these services depends on a lot of factors. You
And how
know,
people are using them.
whether they're truly replacing car ownership or just supplementing it.
It's complicated.
Okay, let's shift gears again and head over to the hospitality industry.
Hospitality.
Airbnb, a huge disruptor here,
Massive.
connecting travelers with hosts who offer short-term rentals.
Totally created a whole new way to experience travel, often at a lower cost than traditional hotels.
Airbnb has been a game changer for travelers, offering those unique accommodations and a more authentic local experience.
But it's also sparked some controversy.
Yeah, particularly in those popular tourist destinations.
Concerns about the impact on the housing market.
Exactly, as more properties are converted into short-term rentals, it can reduce the availability of long-term housing for residents, potentially driving up rents and even displacing locals.
It's a classic example of those unintended consequences, when a disruptive model enters the scene.
It highlights the need for cities to carefully consider that balance between promoting tourism and protecting affordable housing.
Absolutely.
The sharing economy is also making waves in the world of finance.
Oh, yeah.
Peer-to-peer lending platforms, shaking things up,
Cutting out those traditional banks.
connecting borrowers and lenders directly.
It's pretty interesting for borrowers. It can mean access to loans at more favorable rates,
And for lenders.
potentially higher returns on their investments.
But there are risks involved, right?
Of course, these platforms are often less regulated than those traditional financial institutions, so it's important for both borrowers and lenders to do their due diligence.
Understand the terms and conditions.
The potential for default, the level of risk involved.
And then there's crowdfunding, which has become a popular way for entrepreneurs and creatives to raise capital for their projects.
Platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo allowing people to invest in ideas they believe in.
Often in exchange for rewards or equity.
Crowdfunding has democratized access to funding, allowing projects that might not have been considered by those traditional investors to get off the ground.
Powerful tool for innovation.
But again, it's important for investors to do their homework, understand the risks involved, and not get swept up in the hype.
Let's not forget about healthcare. an industry that is ripe for disruption.
Healthcare,
We're starting to see platforms emerge that connect patients with healthcare providers,
offering on-demand access to services like telehealth consultations.
particularly beneficial for people in rural areas or those with limited mobility who might have difficulty accessing traditional healthcare services.
Right, it can increase access and convenience, potentially even reducing costs.
But there are challenges, of course, ensuring quality control and patient safety is paramount.
Absolutely. How do you make sure that patients are receiving appropriate care from qualified providers?
And how do you address those privacy concerns when sensitive medical information is being shared online?
Big questions.
And then there's the sharing of medical equipment and resources.
Oh, yeah, like wheelchairs or hospital beds.
Platforms are popping up that connect people who need that equipment with those who have it available to lend or rent.
Can be a lifesaver for people who need these resources temporarily and don't want to buy them outright.
More sustainable approach.
Reducing waste,
Right.
making sure that valuable equipment is being used rather than gathering dust.
But again, safety and hygiene are crucial considerations.
Absolutely need to have clear guidelines and protocols in place to ensure that shared equipment is properly cleaned and maintained.
So as you can see, the sharing economy is having a profound impact across a wide range of industries,
Disrupting those traditional business models,
creating new opportunities,
raising all sorts of important questions.
about regulation, fairness, sustainability.
And it's not just about the big players like Uber and Airbnb.
Right.
There are countless smaller platforms and initiatives emerging, catering to those niche markets and local communities.
It's an incredibly dynamic and evolving landscape.
Constantly changing.
Which brings us to the big question, what does the future hold for the sharing economy? What trends are shaping its evolution, and how can we as individuals and as a society participate in shaping its future? So we've seen how this model is changing the game across a bunch of industries, but now it's time to put on our futurist hats and look ahead what's next for the sharing economy.
What trends are out there and what does it all mean for us?
Yeah, big questions.
Well, buckle up because things are moving fast, and like with most things these days, technology is going to play a huge role in shaping what happens next.
I mean, we've already seen how powerful tools like AI and machine learning are making those matching algorithms even smarter, right?
Oh, for sure. Giving users more personalized recommendations and even automating tasks behind the scenes to make these platforms, smoother and more user-friendly.
Totally. And let's not forget about blockchain.
Ah, yes. Blockchain has the potential to be a real game changer for the sharing economy.
In what way?
Think about it. Decentralized platforms, more transparent, more secure, giving users more control over their data and building trust into the system.
That's a big deal, especially with all the concerns about data privacy these days.
Absolutely.
And speaking of trends that are shaping the future, sustainability is becoming more important than ever.
Totally. Consumers are way more conscious of their environmental impact, and they're looking for ways to consume more responsibly.
The sharing economy fits right into that.
It's all about using what we already have, reducing waste, promoting a more circular economy.
Whether it's sharing clothes, tools, cars, or even homes, these platforms are helping people access what they need without always buying new stuff.
Exactly. And as awareness of the circular economy grows, I think we can expect to see even more innovation in this space.
What do you mean?
Well, platforms that make it easier to repair, reuse, and recycle goods are going to be in high demand.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about, the big one, the impact of the sharing economy on work and employment.
Ah, yes. As more work gets done through these platforms, it raises some big questions about the future of those traditional jobs.
The gig economy is a double-edged sword, right?
For sure, on the one hand, it offers flexibility and autonomy.
People can set their own hours work from anywhere, be their own bosses.
But on the other hand, gig work often lacks the stability, the benefits, and the protections that come with traditional employment.
Right. No paid time off, no health insurance.
It's led to a lot of debate about whether gig workers should have the same rights and benefits as those traditional employees. Things like minimum wage guarantees, paid time off, health insurance.
This issue isn't going away anytime soon, and how it plays out will have a huge impact on the future of the sharing economy.
Absolutely. Finding ways to ensure fair labor practices and provide those adequate safety nets for gig workers, that's going to be crucial.
So we've got these powerful technological forces shaping the future of the sharing economy.
Right.
A growing focus on sustainability.
Yeah.
And those complex questions about the nature of work. It's a dynamic landscape full of possibilities and challenges.
No doubt.
And the reality is the sharing economy is here to stay.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not a fad. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about accessing and using resources.
Some industries will adapt and thrive, others may struggle to survive.
And for workers, the key will be adaptability, learning new skills, embracing new ways of working, being open to change.
That's the name of the game these days.
But here's the thing, this isn't just something happening to us. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of the sharing economy.
Absolutely. As consumers, as workers, as entrepreneurs, as citizens, we all have choices to make.
Remember that stat we shared earlier about privately owned cars sitting unused for like 95% of their lifespan?
Oh, yeah.
Imagine the potential if we could unlock that kind of value across all sorts of resources.
It's mind-blowing, right? But it's not just about efficiency. It's about creating a more sustainable, more inclusive, and more equitable system.
Making sure that the benefits of the sharing economy reach everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this thought. The future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
The choices we make today will determine the shape of the sharing economy tomorrow.
What role do you want to play in all of this?
That's the question.
We encourage you to explore the source materials we've provided. Dive deeper into those topics that spark your curiosity, and most importantly, keep those wheels turning. The sharing economy is full of possibilities, and it's up to all of us to shape its future. Thanks for joining us.